Independent students, I mentioned that. The federal government defines independent students as anyone who meets any one of a number of criteria. 24 as of January 1st of the award year. That means a student for this award year, 2012-13, coming up, anyone who will be 24 before January 1st, 2013 is by definition an independent student for purposes of federal aid. Also makes them independent for our purposes too. If the student is married or separated, that means still married, even if they're living apart. If they're enrolled in a graduate program, if they're active duty or a veteran of the military, if they have dependent children, actually dependents other than a spouse for whom they provide at least half their support, and that's a key on children, that they have to provide at least half their support, which means that, unfortunately, in Arkansas, we have way too many cases of it. We have teenage mothers or young mothers, young parents. I say mothers because it's predominantly mothers who have children, who are not married, have children. If they live with the parent, if the mother lives with her parents, the odds are they are not independent because they are not providing 50% of the support, considering the grandparent of the child is providing room and board, essentially. So just because there's a dependent child does not mean they will be independent. Most schools will look at that and make a determination. If the student or the parents were deceased, orphaned, or ward of the court after age 13, if they're an emancipated minor, that means a court determination. Legal guardianship, that means a court determination. Not just the child is now living with the grandparents. They are not, by definition, legal guardians, even though they're living there. They may have a power of attorney, but it has to be a court determination of legal guardianship. Or they're homeless as designated by the appropriate agency. And there are a number of different agencies and different situations where a student could be determined to be hopeless or potentially homeless. Now, that having been said, a student doesn't fall into those categories. There are special circumstances where students can qualify and be determined to be independent students, commonly called a dependency override. That's where the financial aid director at the school reviews all the documentation, reviews the situation, and makes a determination that that student is independent. They make updates to the FAFSA, and what that means is they only use the students they only use the student's income. They do not use parental income. It's important to understand that dependency, dependency overrides are done by each individual financial aid office. And if a student goes to ULR and the ULR says, yes, we'll make you we think you should be independent. If that student comes down the road to Conway and goes to UCA, UCA very well may say, no, I'm sorry, we're not going to make you independent. That's perfectly within the rights. That dependency override is only by that school and does not compel another school to do the same thing, because they each have to document it on a case-by-case basis. If there are significant changes in income or assets, for instance, foreclosure on a business, loss of a job, a retirement where the retirement income is going to be significantly less, the school can make adjustments to the data that was on the FAFSA, which will very well may make a change to the expected family contribution and increase the student's aid eligibility. Or significant changes in the living situation, that could be all part of that. What the student should do if they have this situation is one, complete the FAFSA as they normally would, providing whatever information is requested. Contact the financial aid office at their school, the school they plan to attend. Explain the circumstances, provide any documentation or all documentation requested by the school in as timely a manner as possible, and then the school will make a decision. And if they make a decision that, yes, we should make adjustments to income, for instance, income is lost, they may say, all right, we'll reduce the income component in the FAFSA by this amount. They will input that data and the changes will be made. And again, the decision by one school is not binding in any way on another school. And the decision of the school is final. There is no appeal to the Department of Education or Congress or anybody else. Okay, that's federal aid. We talked about state aid, private sources of financial aid. There are many. Among those, foundations and community organizations, religious organizations, employers. There may be organizations related to a student's field of study. For instance, a student may want to go into a scientific field. Well, there may be an association related to that provides financial aid. The only way to find out, unfortunately, is you can't go to one book, one place, one location and say, and it provides everything. There are a number of different places. A lot of these are located on links to this are located on our website, on the ADHE website. We have links to a lot of different sources of financial aid or sources that have information about additional financial aid. The federal government has a number of websites that provide a lot of good information and places to go for students. The bottom line is, for sources of private financial aid, it's going to take some time and some effort and some work on the part of the students and the parents to look for that information and find it. Also, another really good place is the high school counselor. High school counselors have a lot of information on a lot of these private scholarships, the applications, and the process and the time. But again, just like institutional aid, deadlines may vary. They may have only so many scholarships they can give out, and so they want plenty of time to be able to evaluate them. And it's important to remember that students need to find out what the deadlines are, complete the applications, and submit them, and provide whatever information that provider is asking for. Financial aid tips. These are just some things that I've seen and experienced over the last 20 years. And the first one I mentioned before, he who has the gold makes the rules. The federal government sets the rules for federal financial aid. The state sets the rules for state financial aid. Colleges set the rules for their own, and each organization that provides aid sets the rules. They're providing the money, so they set the rules. And whether we like the rules or not, or think they're fair or not, doesn't matter. So if we want to receive money from them, we need to do what they tell us to do, and we need to meet the requirements to keep it. Students and parents must be involved in this process. We highly encourage that when it comes time to complete applications, that the students sit down at the computer and complete the application. But the parent should be sitting right next to the student, so the parent is aware of the process, knows what it is, and can assist the student in any way necessary to complete it, but the student needs to be involved in part of that process. The question everybody wants to know, what's the deadline? When's the latest that can I apply? Well, that's a good question. We need to know what the deadline is for applications. An even better question is how soon can I apply? When does that application become available? Because the sooner a student applies, the sooner they can either have results or the sooner they can verify that they have everything submitted and their application is complete. Too many times, and we just experienced it the past few weeks, Students wait until the day before the deadline, and they try to apply, and they have computer problems, or their internet connection goes down. Or it's possible that whoever they're applying to, they have some technical difficulties. And then, of course, because it's just before the deadlines, the phones are ringing off the wall. Hundreds of emails are coming in, and so they don't get a response in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So avoid the rush and start at the beginning, at the earliest possible time. You may have to sit and wait to find out the results, or to find out whether you're awarded or not, but at least you know you have everything completed. ADHE does not have an ACT code, and that means that students cannot contact ACT and have their ACT scores sent to us electronically. They will need to get a paper score report and mail it to us. Last, FERPA applies. That's the Family Educational Rights Privacy Act. I'm certain that all counselors and high school administrators are very familiar with it. But that means that unless we have a written release from the student, we cannot talk to parents about this application information if the student is 18 or older. We can talk to high school counselors, we can talk to colleges about this, but we can't talk to the parents or other people about the specifics of their applications, which is another reason why students need to be involved in this process. All right. Now I'm going to show a little bit of, we're going to go some data. I'm going to click through these. The significance of this slide and the data, the net result has not changed much over the last year. You can see the number of, there's a direct correlation between economic health and baccalaureate degree attainment. States with low baccalaureate degree attainment have low per capita income and vice versa. Now there's a little deviation from that line, but that generally follows the line. And if you'll notice, Arkansas is down at the bottom, near the bottom. And as I'll have in another slide, we're actually 49th, I think. And that has not changed much in terms of the percentage, the number of the states and the percentage of their adult population of the baccalaureate degree amendment. This slide just shows where most of those counties with the higher percentage of residents who have a bachelor's degree. Notice it's the most populous counties. And notice it's much lower in the rural counties. But that's a percentage of the population. So it just means that the people with a bachelor's degree are either choosing to move and live in those counties, or they were there to begin with. And for all the bachelor's degrees, where do they live? 60% live in those 9 counties. That's pretty, those numbers are consistent between those two slides. But what does that say, given the prior slides? What's that say about the economics and the economic development in some of those other counties? And how well can they attract businesses if they have a low percentage of that population has the necessary education? These numbers are a little bit old, but they're still not totally out of whack. They're still fairly consistent with what we see, and it basically means that out of 37,000 high school graduates, or 9th graders, 6 years late, actually 10 years later, less than 6,000 of those earned a bachelor's degree. Now that's a 6-year graduation rate, not the traditional 4-year graduation rate that we seem to think about. Or I should say, graduated. Only 4,300 had a bachelor's degree. That's 28%. Remediation. Remediation in Arkansas, it's a big issue. It's a big problem nationwide. Students who are not prepared for college, academically prepared in certain subject areas. Notice that almost 60% for this was based on 6-year graduation rate. So understand this goes back a few years. But notice that students who required remediation graduated at a much lower percentage than those who did not need remediation. They're half as likely to graduate as a student that does not need any remediation. Graduation rates. Notice the same slide, same information, slightly different display. And this is at 4-year schools. Approximately half. Graduation rates approximately half for those who need remediation. It's approximately half of those who don't need remediation. And because remediation, to solve that remediation or to repair that for students to take developmental remedial courses at the college level, it's much more expensive than if it's done in the high school or where they don't need remediation. Because they take those courses, somebody has to pay for those courses, primarily those students, and they earn no credit toward graduation. 2-year colleges, notice it's not quite the 50%, but the graduation rates for 2-year colleges is lower than for 4-year schools. Percentage of students, young adults with a college degree by state. Notice it seems to fit somewhat in geographic areas, and Arkansas fits in with a large part of the South. This shows Arkansas as last. That data has changed over the last couple of years. I think we are 49th, just ahead of West Virginia. Now, West Virginia is another state that has a very large percentage of the state is rural. Coal mining was a big industry there, it probably still is, but there's also a lot of poverty. Some similarities between the states. Notice that enrollment has increased over the past 12 to 15 years. We're getting students in school. We're doing a good job of getting students in college. It's the graduation that is the problem. It's getting them out of college with a degree and with a certificate or some other either degree or certificate of completion that they can use and take towards and use toward gainful employment. Why a college education? Most of these, I think for everybody, is it's probably almost intuitive. We know that more college students have, the more likely they are to be involved in volunteer work, civic involvement. College graduates donate more blood. That's a form of civic involvement. And this is a real economic, a boon for economics. We have a degree. Those who have a degree participate less in government assistance programs, more likely to have a job where there's health insurance, so less dependent on Medicaid. And as we'll see in the next slide, less likely to be unemployed, thus less use of unemployment insurance. Got fewer bachelor's degrees in jail. And the last numbers I've seen, it's somewhere around $23,000 or $24,000 a year to keep someone in jail for a year. That's more than the cost of attendance at the UA Fayetteville. So it's cheaper to send a student to school than it is to keep them in jail. Fewer bachelor's degree with bachelor's degrees are below poverty level. It's just consistent with some of the other slides. Fewer unemployed. Now these rates are different. Unemployment has gone up, but still the general comparison, if you have a bachelor's degree, you're less likely to be unemployed than if you only have a high school diploma. And notice the average family income by educational attainment. That's just, this slide is just consistency with the other slides. And here's the one that might get students' attention. Students with a bachelor's degree are likely to earn $1 million more over their lifetime than a student that's a high school graduate. Now, the caveat is that this is a big average. So if students go into certain career fields such as technology fields, computer programming, I won't use medicine because that requires a graduate degree, but other fields, it may be a lot more. English majors may make a lot less. Teachers may make less than this differential. But still, you're going to make more money over your lifetime with a bachelor's degree than you will with a high school diploma, in general.